You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Servant leadership is a practical stance, where a leader's primary role is to enable others to do their best work by removing barriers, clarifying purpose, and creating conditions for learning and reliable delivery. Put plainly, the servant leader asks, "What do you need from me to succeed?" and then acts to provide it, rather than directing tasks from above. The measurable outcomes of this posture are trust. People feel safe to speak up. Accountability. Teams own outcomes rather than waiting for orders. And faster, safer learning, because obstacles are surfaced early and addressed. In exam-style choices, remember this contrast. Escalate when the risk exceeds team authority. Facilitate when the team can decide. That is the servant leader's balance between humility and timely decisiveness. A servant leader models humility and decisiveness within constraints, which means acknowledging what they don't know while still making clear, timely decisions when context demands it. Humility looks like asking questions, crediting the team, and stepping in to help remove obstacles. Decisiveness looks like issuing a clear escalation or closing a decision when ambiguity would harm delivery. Both behaviors are observable. You'll hear invitations to surface impediments, concise removal actions taken, and public framing of why a decision was made. Teams that see this behavior repeatedly learn it. They replicate the pattern and become more autonomous, while trusting that their leader will step up for the hard organizational conversations that require authority. Practically, servant leadership shows up in small daily moves: clearing calendar clutter for focused work, negotiating with stakeholders for realistic priorities, and ensuring information radiators are visible where decisions are made. It also shows up in modeling how to ask for help and how to credit others for success. When the exam asks whether to facilitate or control, choose facilitation if the team has the capability and a clear guardrail, and control when governance requires a centralized decision. The key lesson is observable. Servant leaders reduce friction and increase the team's bandwidth for delivery, not by doing the work for them, but by removing the organizational friction that prevents good work. Early-stage teams display identifiable signals that tell you where to invest coaching and enablers. Unclear roles, erratic workflow, frequent last-minute spikes, and either conflict avoidance or sudden explosive arguments when pressure builds. Practically, you'll see people duplicating work, misunderstood ownership, and handoffs that stall because no one feels empowered to close the loop. These are diagnosis points. Clarify who decides what, create a simple workflow to reveal choke points, and introduce a light cadence of inspect and adapt so patterns emerge and do not repeat. Early intervention prevents cultural norms from hardening into dysfunction that takes months to unwind. Mature teams exhibit different, positive signals that are equally observable: stable cadence in delivery, predictable flow of small increments, proactive self-correction in retrospectives, and transparent trade-offs when priorities shift. The hallmark is ownership of outcomes rather than a collection of assigned tasks. People speak in terms of what the team committed to deliver and how they mitigated risk, not in "I finished X" status notes. Look for language that frames problems as shared, and for rituals where the team collectively decides and then visibly follows through. These patterns show the team has internalized accountability and is likely to maintain performance under stress. To track growth without heavy bureaucracy, use light checklists that spotlight core capabilities. Clear decision rights, a working definition of ready and done, visible backlog hygiene, and routine retrospectives with concrete experiments. Make the checklist brief and observable. Did the team run a retro last sprint? Did they close the improvement they committed to? Do they update the backlog based on demo feedback? So growth becomes a sequence of verifiable changes rather than a subjective impression. This modest instrumentation helps leaders target coaching, where it will produce the fastest return without making the team feel surveilled. Enablers and guardrails convert the abstract idea of empowerment into practical, repeatable scaffolding. Publish a decision rights matrix so everyone knows who may decide which classes of issues without escalation. Codify working agreements to set how the team collaborates day to day, and make definitions of ready and done explicit, so pull decisions and acceptance are objective. These elements reduce ambiguity that causes paralysis and create a safe envelope where teams can act. Guardrails are not chains, they are boundary conditions that allow autonomy within predictable risk limits, enabling faster, safer decision-making. Access to stakeholders and high-quality information radiators are powerful enablers. Teams need timely answers to reduce waiting and rework, and leaders can make this happen by arranging regular stakeholder touchpoints and by ensuring dashboards and artifacts are visible where decisions occur. A small practice, such as a weekly 15-minute sync with the product owner or a public board that shows key risks, can cut days or weeks of stalled work. These enablers keep decision latency low and empower teams to act without constant managerial mediation. Operational guardrails like work-in-progress limits, explicit pull policies, and standard handoff definitions directly reduce thrash and context switching that wrecks predictability. WIP limits force prioritization. Documented pull rules clarify when a team may start new work, and standardized handoffs mean fewer hidden blockers. Together, these practices protect focus and reduce the cognitive load on teams, allowing them to deliver higher quality outcomes without constant firefighting. Ethically, combine these guardrails with anchors of responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty so decisions remain trustworthy and morally grounded. Coaching micro skills are the everyday tools servant leaders use to grow capability without commandeering it. Ask before telling to surface team thinking, practice reflective listening so contributors feel heard, and favor curiosity over certainty to invite exploration rather than shut it down. These habits change conversations from command and control into joint problem solving and encourage team members to bring more options forward. Observable cues include more balanced participation in discussions, fewer immediately accepted top-down solutions, and a gradual increase in team-generated proposals and experiments. Normalize fast, kind, specific, actionable feedback so learning accelerates and defensiveness decreases. Teach people to structure feedback as behavior and effect. When you did X, I observed Y effect. Would you consider Z? Rather than as identity-based criticism. This formula helps teams iterate on skills and collaboration, because fixes are concrete and testable rather than abstract. Leaders model this by acknowledging their own mistakes publicly and by inviting corrective suggestions, which signals that feedback is a routine tool for improvement rather than a performance penalty. Facilitating conflict productively is a core coaching skill. When interests collide, help parties articulate underlying needs and constraints, and then co-design options that respect those constraints. Avoid binary win-lose framing. Instead, map trade-offs, who gains, who gives up, what the cost is, and use small experiments to try compromises. Observably, healthy conflict facilitation produces clearer decisions, shorter debates, and written agreements about who will try what and for how long, rather than lingering resentments that later explode into crisis. Building psychological safety starts with inviting dissent and thanking the messenger when someone raises a concern, even if the concern later proves unfounded. This observable ritual calling out and appreciating dissent signals that speaking up is valued rather than punished, and reduces the cost of surfacing problems early. Separate people from problems by focusing on behaviors and impacts rather than attributing motives. This depersonalization prevents defensiveness and keeps attention on solving the issue rather than finding who to blame. When critiques occur, repair ruptures quickly and document follow-up so trust does not erode. A short repair protocol, acknowledge the harm, state intent to do better, and agree on concrete steps, restores relational balance and maintains momentum. Explicit follow-up with named owners and simple evidence of closure also shows the team that repair is taken seriously, which increases willingness to risk candor in the future. Observability matters. People should be able to see both the rupture and its repair in the team's record. Protect the team from drive-by scope changes by enforcing simple guardrails. Require that any new request include a short impact statement and a named sponsor who will accept trade-offs, and route urgent exceptions through a documented, time-boxed approval path. These practices prevent ad hoc interruptions from becoming normalized and teach stakeholders how to make responsible requests. When the team sees that new asks come with explicit consequences and owners, they experience fewer surprise disruptions and can maintain flow while governance remains responsive. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Decision-making and escalation work best when they are predictable and proportional. Empower the team to decide within predefined thresholds, and escalate only when the potential impact exceeds those limits or requires external authority. Create a simple matrix that lists classes of decisions, routine, technical, product trade-offs, budget increases, regulatory exceptions, and the decision maker for each class, plus the threshold where escalation becomes necessary. When something must be escalated, require a short impact analysis that names the affected scope, schedule, cost, and risk. This keeps escalations concise and focused. Capture decisions and their rationale in a decision log so future reviewers know why a choice was made and which assumptions informed it. This visible discipline preserves the team's autonomy while ensuring that organization-level risks get the attention they deserve without surprise. Use trade-off frameworks aloud to make reasoning transparent when the team or a stakeholder asks you to escalate. Speak the scope/time/cost/risk/quality balance plainly and name the trade-offs you observe. For example, say, to accelerate this feature by 2 weeks, we must cut 2 lower priority slices, accept a 10% higher testing risk, or add temporary QA capacity at X cost. Then invite the accountable decision maker to choose. Publishing who decides what and by when removes ambiguity and speeds outcomes. Include timelines in the escalation path so decisions do not linger. Capture the rationale in the decision log immediately and link the entry to the relevant backlog items and approval artifacts so the record supports audits and future retrospectives about the decision's effects. Escalation should be an exception, not a habit. Teach teams to attempt local resolution first surface options, document trade-offs, and, if barriers remain, escalate with the prepared impact analysis. This pattern keeps lower-risk, high-frequency choices local and reserves formal escalation for proportionally important matters, reducing delay and preventing micromanagement. When managers do need to decide, they should do so quickly, explain their choice in the decision log, and then support the team's execution. This completes the loop and demonstrates that escalations are a means to remove obstacles rather than to displace responsibility. Growing autonomy safely is a staged practice. Start with coaching and guardrails, and expand delegation as the team demonstrates capability and good judgment. Begin by granting decisions of low consequence and observe outcomes. Gradually increase the authority envelope as the team shows consistent alignment with organizational goals and effective handling of trade-offs. Pair novices with experienced mentors during early delegation so risk is buffered while learning occurs. Rotation of ownership across similar decision types deepens capability and prevents single-person dependency, while periodic review of outcomes preserves oversight without colliding with autonomy. When delegating, use explicit thresholds, time, money, or risk that define what the team can sign off on and what requires sign-off. This makes delegation reversible and safe. If an outcome shows the team underestimated the hidden complexity, tighten the guardrail temporarily and coach on what went missing. Importantly, when leadership rescinds a delegation, do so transparently and explain what evidence prompted the change and how the team can regain trust. This approach preserves psychological safety by separating corrective action from punitive judgment and by giving the team a clear path to expand authority again after corrective learning. Celebrate responsible risk-taking and learning, not only success. When a team experiments within its guardrails, recognize the learning outcomes explicitly, even when the experiment fails to produce the hoped-for result. So people see that prudent risk-taking generates organizational value through knowledge. Use short review cycles to inspect experiments and to document the lessons learned in a shared repository. Over time, this creates an observable culture where autonomy grows because the organization sees consistent, measurable returns on delegated decisions and can therefore loosen guardrails with confidence. Measuring maturity should be lightweight and decision-focused. Pick a handful of qualitative indicators that are observable in everyday work, such as predictability of delivery, clarity of ownership, evidence of collaboration, and stakeholder trust. Use brief monthly check-ins where the team scores themselves on these indicators and selects one growth experiment for the next period. Avoid heavy audits. The measure's purpose is to reveal where coaching will produce rapid improvement, not to create compliance burdens. Share progress transparently with stakeholders so they see how autonomy and capability are evolving, which builds patience and reduces premature interference. Complement qualitative signals with a few quantitative hints that reliably correlate to healthier maturity, stability in cycle time, a declining number of reopens or rework items, and shorter blocker resolution times. These metrics are not meant to be performance targets but to surface trends. If cycle time variance narrows and blocker time falls, the team's predictability is improving, which supports broader delegation. Review both qualitative and quantitative signals monthly, pick one growth experiment informed by those signals, and track progress visibly so stakeholders can see the causal chain from coaching to outcome, rather than assuming magic or luck-produced improvements. Keep measurements proportional to effort and respectful of psychological safety. Use simple dashboards that the team controls and interprets together, and avoid publishing raw, person-level metrics that encourage gaming or blame. The goal is collective growth, so metrics should drive shared learning conversations rather than individual scorekeeping. When you present maturity progress to sponsors, include the chosen growth experiment, the observed indicators, and the next steps. This builds confidence that autonomy expansion is intentional, measured, and reversible if necessary. Scenario Vignette. The program manager has kept approvals centralized for months, requiring formal sign-off for many routine decisions. The team's delivery cadence slows, frustration mounts, and morale dips as the team feels disempowered. Option A. Maintain current centralized control and insist the team follows the existing process. Option B. Delegate widely without guardrails and let the team decide everything immediately. Option C. Clarify decision rights, set reasonable thresholds, provide coaching on decision-making, inspect outcomes after several cycles, and adjust guardrails as needed. Option D. Escalate the situation to the sponsor and ask them to mandate a new operating model immediately. I'll give you a moment to consider that. The best next action is Option C. Clarify decision rights, publish thresholds, coach the team on practical decision-making, inspect outcomes, and iterate on the guardrails, because it balances restoring momentum with preserving necessary oversight. Start by creating a simple decision rights matrix that categorizes choices by consequence and assigns decision authority accordingly. Coach the team on applying the trade-off framework out loud when making decisions, then review outcomes after a few cycles to verify the team's judgment and adjust thresholds if needed. This approach quickly reduces approval latency while creating evidence for further autonomy expansion. The strongest distractor is Option B, delegating without guardrails, because it risks allowing inconsistent decisions, exposure to regulatory or contractual breaches, and chaotic rework that could erode stakeholder trust and undo any short-term speed gains. Option A preserves control but prolongs slow delivery and damages morale. It treats the symptom rather than the root cause. Option D escalates too fast and hands the problem upward rather than fixing local decision mechanics. Sponsors may mandate changes without the operational detail needed for a safe transition. Option C combines practical delegation with measured oversight and learning, which is the most sustainable fix. When you clarify rights and begin coaching, verify success through outcomes rather than promises. Check whether decisions were timely, whether their consequences matched expectations, and whether the team documented their rationale. Adjust guardrails when evidence shows consistent competence. Tighten them where outcomes reveal gaps, and coach accordingly. Over time, these cycles produce observable signals of growing autonomy, shorter decision latencies, fewer escalations, and more decisions resolved at the functional level, without exposing the organization to unmanaged risk. Pitfalls in growing team maturity often arise from reflexive habits, a command and control reflex where managers jump in to solve problems they should coach through. Fake empowerment, where choices are labeled delegated but vetoed silently, or no safety net so teams fear experimenting. Avoid these by modeling a consistent coaching stance, by making vetoes explicit and temporary rather than invisible, and by ensuring a clear remediation path exists so teams can fail fast and recover without punishment. Leadership must accept some early friction as the cost of building durable autonomy. A practical quick playbook turns these ideas into daily routines. Set and publish purpose and guardrails clearly so everyone understands the boundaries of autonomy. Equip teams with decision matrices and simple trade-off language. Coach microskills, ask before telling. Listen reflectively, encourage specific feedback, and then inspect outcomes monthly with a single growth experiment. Celebrate learning behaviors publicly, and recalibrate guardrails based on observed evidence. This cycle set purpose, enable, coach, inspect, and grow, builds mature teams that are capable, accountable, and sustainably autonomous. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.